There are definitely customs in South Carolina, and then
Yeah.
there's customs by county even. So certain counties have a custom for who pays which fee. We're all very familiar with our fees here, and so for example, like the deed stamps you were talking about.
Yeah.
When there's a transfer of property in the county, there's a one-time tax, transfer tax, deed stamp tax. Our custom here is that the seller pays that, and that's outlined in the contract.
Yeah.
HOA, most of the time, the purchaser pays the community enhancement fee, which is an HOA fee that's a certain percentage point of the purchase price
Yeah.
that will get added onto the HOA statement, one-time fees.
Yeah.
Other fees are prorated, right? So HOA fees, that is, if you start living there on the 15th, we prorate it based from the 15th until the end of the month. But
Or
those
my favorite one, the propane tank.
the propane
Yeah.
tank,
It's like, and this is a proration of $3.14.
Right.
And
it comes up a lot. People are very, very adamant sometimes about
Oh,
the
yeah.
propane. But that's another payoff, and that's what we have in our data sheets. Like the first question when we open the file on a sale, you may see it is there a propane tank? If so, please let us know so we can call and order a payoff
Yeah.
statement for the propane tank.
Yeah.
But the HOA community fees, that also just again, but sometimes it's a negotiating factor, and you guys know that really well as well, that the seller may pay the community enhancement fee.
Hmm.
Typically it is the buyers, but that's something in the contract process that can be used as a negotiation piece as well.
Yeah, I think most people don't know that they can negotiate that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
almost everything's negotiable in
It
the
is.
contract. I mean,
Well,
There's
my
transfer
favorite
taxes.
on the HOA statements is we order the HOA statement from the HOA as the buyer's attorney, and then it has all those fees listed out there. And sometimes they'll be say to be paid by purchaser, to be paid by seller. It
yeah,
doesn't matter to me. I
Yeah.
go back to the contract.
that's right.
Okay.
Because sometimes someone's like, no, the seller's supposed to pay that. It says it on the HOA statement. I'm like, let's go back to the contract. The amount of times I pull up a contract a day, every transaction.
Yeah.
And I urge buyers, anyone listening, read your contract. Look
Well,
at it.
it's why it's important to have an agent. Because I remember when I first came here, you talk about customs, and I came from Charlotte. When I saw that on there, I was like, every single contract I'm only paid by seller. I just put it on there, and you wouldn't believe how many times it got through.
Mhm.
And then I
Yeah.
get the call,
At the end.
and they're like, "Well, wait a minute, you checked? No, that's not how we do it here." And the buyer always, I said, "It's in the contract."
The
I'm
contract.
sorry. You missed
and
it.
that's what we'll go back to over and over again.
Yeah.
People are like, well, I didn't mean to agree to that. It's like, well, then you need a contract addendum
Yeah.
because you did agree to that.
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly right. And it's totally negotiable. And again, you gotta do it, know when to use it and pull it out. But yeah.
I had it happen this morning where the other side, the attorney on the other side was like, no, this is a buyer fee. This is a buyer HOA fee. Screenshot the part of the contract. It's marked seller.
Yeah.
I'm like, I understand, and 99% of the time it is a buyer fee, but
Yeah.
it says seller on there, so we have to follow the contract.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It sucks sometimes to be on the other end of that.
Well, I hate to say it, but and this is for you too, Hunter, who's not on camera. Just because you have your real estate license, you got to be on top of things because you got to read, you got to know what it says, and you got to make sure you're paying attention and not just go through the motions like something.
That's kind of my PSA to all real estate agents is Butler and College, myself, I can say I am available to my agents. If you call me and say, hey, I don't know what to do with this contract, I rather face it head on before it's signed
Yeah,
than afterwards, because then at that point when the contract gets to my office executed, my hands are tied.
that's right.
So I think we've had that happen a few times where we were chatting on like texting or something on a weekend about insurable or marketable title. That was us together.
I don't remember. Maybe it was the other David Cross.
Huh. I've got some terrible leads.
So
Yeah, he still owes me for that.
Terrible, right?
that guy. So
So yeah, I just kind of talking about the issues that can come up with title, right? What happens after closing? So say we close the transaction and the seller moves in and all of a sudden there's an issue with the property and it was not disclosed on our forms. How is that handled?
So we've had that happen where the first thing again, pull up the contract, pull up the disclosures, and see what was stated on there.
Yeah.
And honestly, typically at Butler and College, we do not engage in litigation of those kinds of matters.
Yeah, so there's two different things.
So
yeah.
it would be more so I would refer to an attorney that specializes in that kind of post-closing litigation of a failure to disclose or like a blatant misrepresentation.
And for the podcast listeners, transactional law is usually everyone's kind of coming together, trying to agree, everyone's happy. Litigation is when you go sue each other in court. It's
Yeah.
the one you see on TV and in the movies all the time.
Yeah.
Transactional law is incredibly boring to put on a TV show or a movie, so that's why we're never.
Love it.
Yeah. So it's great for a podcast.